Day. I don't know anymore. Night again. Moon's out, water's calm, nobody's coming. Still recording. Don't know why. Maybe someone finds this. Maybe the raft, maybe just the phone.
The following account has been compiled from multiple sources: audio and video recordings from United States Coast Guard Cutter Vigilant during rescue operations on March 17, 2024, medical reports from Naval Medical Center San Diego, where the subject was treated for 37 days, interview transcripts conducted by NCIS Special Agent Diana Reyes between March 19 and April 23, 2024, personal journals and audio diaries maintained by the subject prior to his disappearance in 2014, statements from family members, colleagues and witnesses, and the official incident report filed by the Coast Guard's 11th District, significant portions of which remain classified pending ongoing investigation. The subject's identity has been confirmed through DNA analysis, dental records and fingerprint matching. His account of the intervening 10 years has not been verified and is considered in official documentation inconsistent with known physical and temporal parameters. His current whereabouts are monitored by federal authorities. The morning of March 17, 2024, began like any other patrol for the crew of the Coast Guard Cutter Vigilant, a 210-foot medium-endurance vessel operating out of San Diego on a routine fisheries enforcement mission approximately 340 nautical miles southwest of the California coast. The weather was clear, the seas calm, the kind of perfect Pacific morning that made veteran sailors suspicious because perfection on the ocean usually preceded something else entirely. Lieutenant Commander Marcus Webb, the officer of the deck, was reviewing the previous night's radar logs when Petty Officer Second Class Elena Gutierrez called out from the bridge wing that she had spotted something in the water bearing 270 approximately 800 yards off the port bow. Webb raised his binoculars and saw what appeared to be debris, possibly from a vessel in distress, and ordered the helmsman to adjust course for investigation. It was 06:47 hours. Within the next 30 minutes, everything the crew of the Vigilant thought they understood about the ocean, about time, about the boundaries of what was possible, would begin to unravel. The object in the water was not debris. As the cutter approached, the lookouts identified it as a human figure, floating face up in a standard survival posture, arms extended, head tilted back, the position taught in every water survival course to maximize buoyancy and minimize energy expenditure. This in itself was unusual. A person floating alone 340 miles from the nearest land, without a life jacket, without any visible flotation device, without any wreckage or vessel nearby, should have been dead. The water temperature at that location was 61 degrees Fahrenheit, cold enough to induce hypothermia in an unprotected swimmer within 4 to 6 hours, yet the figure was moving. Small adjustments of the limbs that indicated consciousness, indicated life, indicated something that should not have been possible under the circumstances. Lieutenant Commander Webb ordered a rescue swimmer deployed. Petty Officer First Class David Chen, a 12-year veteran with over 200 rescues to his credit, entered the water at 6:59 hours and swam toward the floating man. What he reported over the radio would become the first of many details that investigators would struggle to explain. Chen's voice on the recording is professional, controlled, the voice of a man trained to remain calm in crisis situations. He reports reaching the subject at 07:02 hours and confirms that the subject is alive, conscious and responsive to verbal commands. He reports that the subject appears to be a Caucasian male, approximately 30 to 40 years of age, with dark hair and a beard of indeterminate length. He reports that the subject is wearing what appears to be civilian clothing, a button-down shirt and khaki pants, heavily degraded by saltwater exposure, but intact. Then he pauses, and when he speaks, again there is something in his voice that was not there before, something that sounds like confusion or disbelief, or the beginning of fear. He reports that the subject's skin shows no signs of sun exposure, no sunburn, no dehydration symptoms, no indication that he has been floating in open ocean under direct sunlight. He reports that the subject's eyes, when he looks into them, are clear and alert, not the glazed eyes of a drowning victim or a person suffering from exposure. He reports that the subject, when asked how long he has been in the water, looks at him with an expression that Chen cannot interpret and says, "I don't know. What year is it?" Chen told him it was 2024. The subject closed his eyes, and something that might have been relief or might have been despair passed across his features. Then he said very quietly, "Then it's been 10 years. I've been trying to come back for 10 years. The subject was brought aboard the Vigilant at 07:14 hours and immediately examined by the ship's medical officer, Lieutenant Junior Grade Sarah Okonkwo. Her preliminary report, recorded in real time via her body-worn camera, documents a series of observations that she repeatedly describes as inconsistent and requiring further evaluation. The subject's vital signs were within normal parameters: heart rate 72 beats per minute, blood pressure 118/76, respiratory rate 14 breaths per minute, core body temperature 98.4 degrees Fahrenheit. These numbers were impossible. Person who had been floating in 61-degree water for any significant length of time should have shown signs of hypothermia, elevated heart rate, decreased core temperature, the physiological markers of a body fighting to survive. The subject showed none of these. His body, according to Lieutenant Okonkwo's report, appeared to be in the condition of a person who had just stepped out of a comfortable room, not a person who had been adrift in the Pacific Ocean. She conducted a brief cognitive assessment, asking the subject his name, his date of birth, the name of the current president. He answered the first two questions without hesitation. His name was Michael David Hartley. His date of birth was June 14, 1984. The third question gave him pause. He asked who was president when he left. Lieutenant Okonkwo told him it was 2024, that Joseph Biden was president. The subject shook his head slowly and said that when he left, when he went into the water, Barack Obama had just started his second term. He asked if anything important had happened in the last 10 years. Lieutenant Okonkwo, uncertain how to respond, told him that a lot had happened. The subject nodded, as if this was expected, and said that he imagined it had, that 10 years was a long time on this side, though it hadn't felt like 10 years where he was. The name Michael David Hartley triggered an immediate database search, and within 2 hours, the Vigilance Operations Center had confirmed what the subject's statement suggested: a man named Michael David Hartley, matching the subject's physical description and date of birth, had been reported missing on September 3, 2014, after failing to return from a solo sailing trip off the coast of San Diego. His vessel, a 32-foot sloop named Wanderer, had been found adrift 3 days later, approximately 180 miles southwest of the departure point, with no sign of the owner. The Coast Guard had conducted an extensive search over the following week, covering more than 25,000 square nautical miles, and had found nothing. Michael Hartley was declared lost at sea in October 2014. His wife, Catherine Hartley, had held a memorial service the following month. She had never remarried. She had never stopped hoping. And now, 10 years later, the Coast Guard was calling her to tell her that her husband had been found floating in the Pacific Ocean, alive and apparently unharmed, with no explanation for where he had been or how he had survived. The Vigilant, diverted to San Diego at maximum speed, arriving at Naval Station San Diego at 18:47 hours on March 17th. Michael Hartley was transferred to the Naval Medical Center under guard, not because he was considered dangerous, but because the circumstances of his recovery had triggered protocols that no one on the cutter fully understood, protocols that involved federal agencies whose involvement suggested that whatever had happened to Michael Hartley was not a simple case of a sailor lost at sea. Catherine Hartley was notified and arrived at the medical center at 20:30 hours, accompanied by her sister and her attorney. She was allowed to see her husband for approximately 15 minutes, during which time, according to the nursing staff who observed through the window, she held his hand and cried while he spoke to her, in a voice too quiet to be overheard. When she emerged from the room, she was asked by the attending physician whether her husband had explained where he had been for the past 10 years. Her response, recorded in the physician's notes, was, "He says he was in the water. He says he's been in the water the whole time. He says there's a place down there. A place you can go if you know how to find it, and he's been trying to find his way back ever since he went there. He says they didn't want to let him leave. The first formal interview with Michael Hartley was conducted on March 19, 2024, by NCIS Special Agent Diana Reyes, a 20-year veteran of the agency who had been assigned to the case due to her experience with unusual maritime incidents. The interview was recorded on video and audio, and a full transcript was prepared for the official case file. Agent Reyes began with standard questions: his full name, his date of birth, his last known address, his occupation. Hartley answered each question calmly and accurately, his voice flat, his eyes focused on a point somewhere beyond the interview room wall. His occupation, he said, had been marine biologist. He had worked for the Scripps Institution of Oceanography for 7 years before his disappearance, specializing in deep-sea ecosystems and bioluminescent organisms. He had been conducting independent research on the day he disappeared, following up on sonar anomalies that had been detected during a previous expedition, anomalies that the official reports had dismissed as equipment malfunction, but which Hartley believed indicated the presence of previously undocumented geological formations on the seafloor. He had sailed to the coordinates alone because he wanted to see for himself, because no one else at the Institute took the anomalies seriously, because sometimes the most important discoveries were made by people who were willing to look where others refused to look. Agent Reyes asked him what he found at those coordinates. Hartley was silent for a long moment, his eyes still fixed on that distant point, and when he spoke, his voice had changed, becoming softer, more hesitant, the voice of a man choosing his words with extreme care. He said that the water at those coordinates was different. He could feel it even from the surface, a change in the way the swells moved, a change in the color of the blue, a change in the quality of the silence when he cut his engine and drifted. He said he had put on his diving gear and gone over the side, intending to make a preliminary survey of the bottom, which, according to his charts, should have been approximately 300 feet. Below, he said he had descended through water that felt thicker than normal, denser, as if the ocean itself was resisting his progress. He said he had reached 150 feet, then 200 feet, then 250 feet, and the bottom was still not visible, and his depth gauge was behaving erratically, showing numbers that fluctuated wildly even though his descent rate was constant. He said he had continued past the limits of safe recreational diving, past the point where nitrogen narcosis should have impaired his judgment, past the point where his air supply should have forced him to turn back, and still the bottom receded below him, always just out of reach, always visible as a faint suggestion of shape in the darkness below. He said he had not noticed when he stopped descending and started being pulled. The interview transcript notes that Hartley paused at this point for approximately 45 seconds before continuing. Agent Reyes did not prompt him. She waited, and eventually Hartley resumed his account, describing an experience that the official report would later characterize as consistent with decompression-induced hallucination, but which Hartley maintained throughout 37 days of interviews was absolutely and literally true. He said the pulling sensation was gentle at first, like a current, like the ocean was guiding him somewhere rather than forcing him. He said he looked down and saw the bottom finally coming into view, but it was not the bottom he expected, not sand, or rock or coral, but something else, something that looked like architecture, structures rising from the seafloor in patterns that were too regular to be natural, but too alien to be human. He said the structures were enormous, dwarfing anything he had ever seen underwater, and they were glowing, or parts of them were glowing, a faint bioluminescence that pulsed in rhythms that reminded him of breathing or heartbeat or something in between. He said he had descended toward them, no longer. Swimming no longer in control of his movement, simply falling through water that had become as dark as the space between stars. And as he fell, he began to hear something. Not a sound exactly, because sound requires air, and his ears were full of water, but a vibration, a presence, a voice that was not a voice speaking in a language that was not a language, and what it was saying, what it was communicating in ways that bypassed his ears and went directly into his mind was, "Welcome, finally. We've been waiting. You found your way, now you can see." Agent Reyes asked him what he saw. Hartley's response, transcribed verbatim from the interview recording, was as follows: "I saw the city. That's the only word I have for it, even though it wasn't a city, not like any city that humans have built. It was more like a place where things lived, old things, things that were here before the ocean was an ocean, before the continents were continents, before there was anything on the surface. That could look up at the stars and wonder what was looking back. They built this place, or they grew it, or they dreamed it into existence. I'm not sure there's a difference at that depth. And when I reached it, when I passed through some kind of boundary that I couldn't see but could feel, I stopped being in the water. I was somewhere else. I was inside. And they were there. They were all around me. And they were so glad that I had come. The medical team at Naval Medical Center San Diego conducted extensive testing on Michael Hartley over the course of his 37-day stay, and the results of these tests constitute some of the most puzzling elements of the case file. His physical condition was, by every measurable standard, excellent. His cardiovascular health was that of a man 15 years younger. His muscle mass was consistent with regular exercise. His skin showed no damage from sun or salt exposure. His lungs showed no scarring from aspiration or near drowning. His blood work was normal in every parameter except one. His cells showed a telomere length typically associated with a person in their mid-20s, not a man approaching 40. Telomeres, the protective caps on chromosomes that shorten with age, were being used by researchers as a marker for biological aging, and by every indication, Michael Hartley's cells were younger than they should have been, younger than they had been when he disappeared in 2014. The lead physician on the case, Commander Robert Yamamoto, noted in his report that this finding was unexplained by any known medical process and recommended further study. Further study was not approved. The case file was transferred to a different jurisdiction 3 weeks later, and Commander Yamamoto was reassigned to a posting in Guam. The interviews with Agent Reyes continued throughout Hartley's hospitalization, and over the course of 14 sessions, totaling more than 40 hours of recorded testimony, he provided an account of his 10 years in the underwater city that grew progressively more detailed and progressively more disturbing. He described the beings he encountered there, which he referred to only as they or them, never giving them a name because, he said, their true names could not be pronounced by human vocal cords, and any approximation would be an insult. He described them as vast, as ancient, as patient, beyond any human understanding of patience. He described their forms as fluid, changing, impossible to fix in memory, so that each time he tried to recall what they looked like, the image shifted and became something else, something his mind could not hold. He described their attention as overwhelming, a pressure that was not physical, but felt physical. The sensation of being studied by intelligences so far beyond human comprehension that the act of being noticed by them was itself transformative. He described the city they inhabited, if inhabited was the right word, as extending, downward and inward in directions that did not correspond to any geometry he had learned, with spaces that were larger on the inside than the outside, with corridors that connected points that should have been miles apart, with chambers that contained things he could not describe, because the act of describing them would require concepts that human language had not developed. And he described time. Time, Hartley explained, did not work in the city the way it worked on the surface. He had experienced what felt like days, perhaps weeks, certainly no more than a few months. He had eaten food that they provided, food that appeared in his hands when he thought about hunger, food that tasted like nothing and everything, that sustained him without filling him. He had slept in spaces that configured themselves around his body, that held him suspended in darkness, while his mind processed experiences that his conscious self could not endure. He had conversations, or what felt like conversations, exchanges of thought and image and sensation that left him knowing things he had not known before, things about the history of the earth, the history of the ocean, the history of life itself, things that he had been shown because they wanted him to understand, because understanding was the first step toward acceptance, and acceptance was what they ultimately wanted, acceptance of their presence, acceptance of their influence, acceptance of the role that humanity was destined to play in their long plan. Agent Reyes asked him what role that was. Hartley looked at her directly for the first time in the interview, and the recording shows that his eyes, which had been unfocused and distant throughout his testimony, suddenly sharpened with an intensity that made Agent Reyes lean back slightly in her chair. He said, "Caretakers, that's the closest word. They've been here for so long, longer than I can make you understand, and they've been sleeping or waiting or something in between. But they're starting to wake up now. Something is changing, something in the water, in the temperature, in the chemistry. I don't know exactly, but it's changing, and it's making them stir. And when they fully wake up, they'll need people who understand them, people who can communicate between their world and ours, people who can help manage the transition. That's why they let me see. That's why they taught me. That's why they finally let me come back, because I'm supposed to be the first. I'm supposed to prepare the way." The final interview with Michael Hartley took place on April 23, 2024, the day before his scheduled release from the Naval Medical Center. Agent Reyes had been informed that morning that the case was being transferred to an agency she was not authorized to name, and that her involvement was concluded. She conducted the interview anyway, off the record, using her personal phone to record audio that she later preserved on a secure drive that she has never submitted to any official archive. The recording is 43 minutes long. For the first 30 minutes, Hartley recounted additional details about the city, the beings, the things he had learned during his decade below the surface. Then, Agent Reyes asked the question that had been forming in her mind since the first interview, the question that everything else seemed to be building toward. Why did they let you leave? Hartley's answer, preserved on Agent Reyes's personal recording, was this: "Because I asked. Every day, or what felt like every day, I asked them to let me go back. I told them I had a wife, that she would be waiting, that I needed to see her again, that whatever they wanted from me, I would give them, but I needed to go home first. And they listened. They always listened. But they kept saying it wasn't time, that I wasn't ready, that there was more I needed to learn, more I needed to become before I could return. And then, one day, they said yes. They said I was ready. They said I could go back, but only if I understood that going back meant bringing them with me. Not physically. They don't move the way we move, but in my mind, in my knowledge, in the things I would tell people, and the changes those tellings would create. They said I was a seed, and they were planting me in the world above the water, and what grew from that seed would be the beginning of something they had been planning since before the first fish crawled onto land. They said they were patient. They said they could wait a little longer. They said the ocean was rising, the ice was melting, the old boundaries were dissolving, and soon, very soon by their standards, the separation between their world and ours would be thin enough to cross. They said I was just the first. They said there would be others. They said some of the others were already among us, had been for years, people who had gone into the water and come back changed, people who didn't even know what they had become, what was sleeping inside them, what would wake when the signal was given. Agent Reyes asked what signal. Hartley smiled for the first and only time in all 14 interviews, a smile that she would later describe to colleagues as the most disturbing expression she had ever seen on a human face, a smile that seemed to contain knowledge that no human being should possess. He said, "You'll know it when you hear it. Everyone will. It will come from the water, from every ocean, every sea, every lake and river and puddle of rainwater deep enough to reflect the sky. And when you hear it, you'll understand that they've been here all along, waiting just below the surface, waiting for the world to be ready, waiting for enough of us to know the truth. The truth is very simple, Agent Reyes. The truth is that the ocean doesn't belong to us. We're just borrowing it, and the owners are waking up." Michael Hartley was released from the Naval Medical Center on April 24, 2024, into the custody of representatives from an agency that the hospital's records identify only by a numerical designation that does not correspond to any known government organization. His wife, Catherine, was informed that he would be unavailable for an indeterminate period due to ongoing evaluation, and that she would be contacted when visitation was possible. She has not been contacted. She has filed 7 formal inquiries with the Coast Guard, the Navy, the Department of Defense, and her congressional representatives. All inquiries have been acknowledged, and none have been answered. She continues to live in the San Diego home she shared with her husband, and according to neighbors, she can often be seen at night standing on the balcony that overlooks the ocean, watching the water, waiting for something. The crew of the Vigilant was debriefed in the week following the rescue and instructed not to discuss the incident publicly. Petty Officer First Class David Chen, the rescue swimmer who first reached Hartley in the water, requested transfer to a shore-based position 2 months later, citing personal reasons. In a statement he provided to a maritime researcher who contacted him in early 2025, Chen said that he had not been able to swim since the rescue, that every time he entered water deeper than a bathtub, he felt something watching him from below, something patient and curious and vast, and that he knew with absolute certainty that if he swam out far enough, if he dove deep enough, he would find them waiting for him, ready to show him what they had shown Michael Hartley, ready to make him understand. He said he didn't want to understand. He said some knowledge was too heavy to carry. He said he had started dreaming about the city, even though he had never seen it, even though Hartley had never described it to him. And in the dreams the city was singing, and the song was beautiful, and every night it was a little harder to wake up. Lieutenant Junior Grade Sarah Okonkwo, the medical officer who first examined Hartley aboard the Vigilant, resigned her commission in September 2024 and enrolled in a graduate program in marine biology at the Scripps Institution of Oceanography, the same institution where Hartley had worked before his disappearance. When contacted for this account, she declined to be interviewed, but provided a written statement that read, in part, "What I observed during the Hartley rescue contradicted everything I was taught about human physiology and survival at sea. I have spent the month since then trying to understand what I saw, and the more I learn about the ocean, the less I understand. Michael Hartley was in the water for 10 years. That is impossible. Michael Hartley aged backward during that time. That is impossible. Michael Hartley described an underwater civilization that has existed since before human history began. That should be impossible. But I examined him. I took his vitals. I looked into his eyes. And I know, with a certainty that I cannot justify scientifically, that he was telling the truth. I don't know what that means. I'm trying to find out. I've started diving, going deeper each time, looking for the anomalies that Hartley mentioned in the coordinates where he disappeared. I haven't found them yet, but I can feel that I'm getting closer. I can feel something down there waiting, and I think it can feel me too. The coordinates where Michael Hartley originally disappeared in September 2014 and where his boat was found drifting 3 days later have been the subject of ongoing monitoring since his recovery. NOAA buoys in the region have detected acoustic anomalies on 17 separate occasions between April 2024 and the present day, anomalies that are described in official reports as unidentified biological sounds, but which audio analysts who have reviewed the recordings describe as something else entirely. One analyst, speaking on condition of anonymity, said that the sounds are structured, patterned, repeating in sequences that suggest intentionality, that suggest communication, that suggest something vast and distributed across a wide area, producing coordinated signals for a purpose that he cannot determine. He said the sounds have been getting stronger over the past year. He said they seem to be coming from deeper than any known marine life inhabits. He said that if he didn't know better, if he wasn't a scientist committed to rational explanations, he would say the sounds were a language, and that whatever was speaking, it was saying the same thing over and over again. A message that could be translated roughly as, "We are here, we are waking, we remember, we are coming." The case file on Michael Hartley remains open, classified at a level that prevents most government employees from accessing it. His current location is unknown. His wife continues to wait. The ocean continues to rise. And somewhere, 340 miles southwest of San Diego, at coordinates that have been removed from public nautical charts, something continues to stir in depths that no human technology has fully explored, something that has been sleeping for longer than human civilization has existed, something that chose Michael Hartley to be its messenger, and then released him back into a world that was not ready to hear the message, a world that may never be ready, a world that will have to become ready whether it wants to or not, because patience, as Hartley explained in his final interview, is not something they lack. Supplemental material recovered from Michael Hartley's personal effects includes a journal he maintained during his time at the Scripps Institution of Oceanography prior to his September 2014 disappearance. The final entry, dated September 2, 2014, the day before he sailed to the coordinates that would change his life, contains the following passage. The sonar readings are unlike anything in the database. The official explanation is equipment error, but I've checked the equipment 3 times. It's not error. There's something down there, something large, something that shouldn't be possible at that depth. Dr. Reinhold thinks I'm chasing shadows. Maybe I am. But the shadows are shaped like buildings. The shadows are shaped like purpose. Tomorrow I'm going to find out what's casting them. Tomorrow I'm going to see for myself. Whatever I find, I'll document it. If I'm right, this could change everything we think we know about the ocean. If I'm wrong, at least I'll know. At least I'll stop dreaming about it. The dreams have been getting worse lately. Every night I'm underwater, and every night I go a little deeper, and every night there's something at the bottom waiting for me, something that knows my name, something that's been calling me for years, without me knowing how to listen. Tomorrow I'll listen. Tomorrow I'll finally understand. I think they want me to come. I think they've been waiting for me specifically. I don't know why. I don't know if I want to find out. But I'm going anyway. Some doors, once you know they exist, you have to open. The door was opened. Michael Hartley walked through. He came back 10 years later with a message for a world that does not want to hear it. The message is simple. The ocean is not empty. The ocean has never been empty. And what lives in its depths has been watching us since before we knew how to look back. They are patient. They are ancient. They are waking up. And Michael Hartley was just the beginning. Document classification level 7, eyes only. Case file USN NCIS 2024-0317 Hartley. Status: transferred, receiving agency, redacted. Subject location: unknown, monitoring ongoing, acoustic monitoring station, Alpha 7, active, signal strength increasing. Note: all personnel assigned to this case are required to report any unusual dreams, auditory hallucinations, or compulsive thoughts related to water or submersion. Personnel exhibiting these symptoms will be reassigned and evaluated. Do not attempt to investigate the coordinates independently. Do not attempt to contact the subject. Do not attempt to verify any claims made in the subject's testimony. There are protocols in place for a reason. Follow them. And if you find yourself standing at the edge of the water at night listening for something you can't quite hear, walk away. Walk away, and don't look back. Some of us weren't able to walk away. Some of us are still listening. Some of us can hear them now every night, getting closer, getting louder, getting ready. The signal is coming. When it arrives, we'll all understand. Until then, the only safe choice is ignorance. Stay ignorant. Stay dry. Stay away from the water after dark. Catherine Hartley's most recent public statement was posted to a Maritime Missing Persons Forum on February 3, 2025. It reads, "They say my husband is alive. They say he's being evaluated. They say I can't see him, can't talk to him, can't know where he is, or when he's coming home. They say a lot of things, but they don't say what matters. They don't say where he was for 10 years. They don't say how he survived. They don't say why he aged backward or why his eyes are different now, or why in the 15 minutes they let me see him, he told me things about the ocean that I can't stop thinking about, things that wake me up at night, things that make me stand on my balcony and watch the water and wonder what's down there, what's been down there all along, what's been waiting. Michael told me they're beautiful. He told me they're kind in their way. He told me they don't want to hurt us. They just want us to understand. And understanding will change everything. Will change what it means to be human. Will change our place in a world that was never really ours to begin with. He told me not to be afraid. He told me the water was safe now, safer than it had ever been, because they were watching, they were protecting, they were preparing. He told me that someday soon, when the time was right, he would take me to meet them. He told me I would love them the way he loves them. He told me everyone would. I don't know if my husband is still my husband. I don't know if what came back from the water is the man I married or something else wearing his face. I don't know what to believe anymore. But every night I stand on the balcony, every night I watch the water, and every night, I swear, just before dawn, I hear something. It sounds like singing. It sounds like it's getting closer. And God help me, it sounds beautiful. End of compiled document. Distribution, restricted. Retention, permanent. Final note. The acoustic monitoring stations positioned at the coordinates of Hartley's original disappearance have recorded a 340% increase in signal activity since January 2025. Pattern analysis suggests the signals are no longer random. They appear to be counting down. At current progression rates, the countdown will reach 0 in approximately 847 days. What happens then is unknown. Contingency plans are being developed. Public disclosure is not recommended at this time. Maintain monitoring. Maintain silence. And if any personnel hear the singing, report it immediately. We need to know how far it's spreading. We need to know who else is listening. We need to know how many of us are already seeds, waiting to bloom, waiting for the signal, waiting for the ocean to call us home.